Hi there, I'm Solveig Dittmann, and I grew up in Northfield, and I've been a jewelry artist for about 30 years. The journey started with a silversmithing class, and I became entirely hooked on the idea that I could make my own jewelry. Since that time, it's blossomed into a little bit of a small business, but mostly it's still a very strong hobby. About 10 years ago, though, I got a job where I had to travel quite a bit, and there was no way you could take a silversmith shop with you when you're traveling. So I decided to pursue something different, and I started to look into different types of beading. And today I want to show you that with the infinite numbers of colors and types of beads and crystals, multiplied by the many different types of stitches you can use to assemble beads, the possibilities are absolutely endless. The first stitch I'd like to talk about and illustrate for you is peyote stitch. It's a stitch that I have been using since I first started bead weaving, and you can do a number of things with peyote that look very different. The first one I'd like to show you is just a flat peyote, but a stitch that you have to alter to insert crystals in the middle of it, and it turns out very delicate and very ornate. Here's another example of peyote stitch where a few of the beads were added at the top of the piece to make it three-dimensional. Peyote stitch can also be used to surround cabochons and make elegant bezels for cabochons with this peyote stitched butterfly pendant bail. I also use peyote stitch around Swarovski crystal Rivoli stones to make sparkling jewelry. I make sparkling bracelets and sparkling necklaces, and that again is also peyote stitch. And finally, peyote stitch can also be used to make three-dimensional shapes, such as these squares and circles and triangles in this lariat type of necklace. Next, I want to talk about brick stitch. Brick stitch can be used for a number of types of pieces, especially if you combine them with other stitches, which I'll show you in a minute. But my Scandinavian heritage is evident when you look at these brick-stitched earrings that were inspired by old images of rose mauling. And then there's a circular brick stitch that I use to create these round hoop earrings that are influenced by Southwest patterns and colors. And they are stitched around a central core, which is a little metal circle. And then I use a combination of brick stitch with fringe stitch to make these highly Southwest influenced fringe type of earrings. Then I'd like to talk about the circular stitches, the tubular, I should say, tubular stitches. These are actually two bracelets made with the exact identical beads, but look how different they look, and that is all because of the stitch. This one is called spiral stitch for obvious reasons, and this one is called chenille stitch. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about beading on a loom. Unlike all of these other stitches that I just described, where you add one bead at a time on a very long thread, bead looming, you warp a loom. I'm sure most people are familiar with it. You warp threads this way on a loom, and then you stitch a whole row of beads on it at a time, which actually cuts down on the time that you spend weaving on a loom. But you can make it as simple or complex as you like. As you can see, all of these pieces were beaded on a loom, but they look very different just because of the pattern and the choice of beads. And this particular one was also woven on a loom, but stitched on to a flexible copper bracelet so that it could be made into a beaded cuff. So you can see these are just a few of the types of stitches and beads that I do. I have been participating in the Northfield Arts Guild Riverfront Festival for at least 25 years, and I'm glad to be able to have some presence this year while we all stay safe at home.